Hello and welcome back to chapter 21. The witch pulled back the hood of her cloak. Her skin was as smooth as china, her hair like flax, and her eyes sparkled like rubies. She sniffed the air. "Rumpolt, has it ever occurred to you why I live in a remote forest?" The little old man gulped in fear and shook his head. "House prices?" "It's because I value my privacy." She closed the door as if to emphasize her point. "You understand what privacy is, don't you?" The little old man nodded, too scared to speak. "Then what, may I ask, was that dreadful noise?" The little old man looked down at the horn round his neck. His lower lip trembled, as if he was about to cry. Then he thrust out an accusing finger. "It's their fault!" Ever so slowly, the witch turned and peered at Harrison and Lana, seeing them for the first time. She smiled, closed her eyes and breathed deeply, as if the air was full of delicious scent. "Goodness me," she cooed. "Children!" "From the supermarket," simpered the little old man, wringing his hands, his eyes begging for forgiveness. "I told you that my plan would work. These two are the first of many, mistress, I promise." "But what are they doing in there? That's no way to treat guests." I stammered the little old man. "I do apologise," soothed the witch, unbolting the cage. "Honestly, Rumpolt, what were you thinking?" She offered her hand to Lana, who hesitated. "Come, child, I won't bite, I promise." Warily, Lana took the witch's hand and let herself be led out into the room. But instead of letting her go, the witch pulled her closer. "And what might your name be?" "Lana." The witch's fingers brushed Lana's cheek. They were ice cold, and Lana felt herself shudder. "And who's this?" She peered into the cage. "My brother Harrison." "A boy!" beamed the witch. "Come, let's take a look at you." Hesitantly, Harrison climbed out of the cage and stood beside his sister. "Now, were you offered a drink or anything to eat?" Lana and Harrison shook their heads. "Rumpolt, some food for our guests." She threw a meaningful look at the little old man, who nodded and set to work at the stove. "Here, have a drink." The witch smiled at the children as she picked up a pewter jug and filled 2 tin cups with steaming, thick hot chocolate. As delicious as the chocolate smelled, they knew better than to take a drink offered by a witch. They each took a cup and lifted it to their lips, pretending to sip. "Now, Rumpolt, where are those pancakes? It never does for children to be too thin, I always think. Every child The witch cut herself off mid-sentence. "I'm sorry. Looks better, with a little fat on them." "At your service, mistress," said the little old man breathlessly, offering up 2 delicious-looking pancakes drenched in syrup. "Yum!" exclaimed the witch, rubbing her hands with glee. "Harrison, why don't you take one?" Harrison looked at Lana and gave her the tiniest of nods that only a sister could understand. Harrison gingerly reached out his hand, hovering over the pancakes as if he was trying to choose one. But, quick as a flash, he turned and threw his drink into the little old man's face, who shrieked in surprise. A second later, Lana threw her drink at the witch. "Ugh!" spluttered the witch, stumbling backwards as the thick liquid dripped down her face. Lana leapt around and pushed the witch into the open cage. Before the little old man had composed himself, Harrison grabbed him tightly by the ear and threw him in the cage too. Lana hurriedly bolted the cage, then the 2 children raced for the door. They froze. Standing right in front of them was the witch. How had she gotten out so quickly? "Impressive," she simpered. "Most children are too terrified to try to escape, but you two—" She licked her thin lips. "You two are different. Well done. Rumpolt, fetch their reward, please." Lana and Harrison turned round to see the little old man standing next to the now empty cage. Their hearts sank. The witch's magic was too powerful for them to overcome. All they could do was watch helplessly as the little old man sauntered over to the large glass-fronted cabinet. Glass-fronted cabinet. In it were row after row of tiny glass phials, each one full of coloured powder and decorated with strange symbols. "I think the green, don't you?" asked the witch, and the little old man dutifully handed her a little glass phial of powder. Smiling, the witch pulled out the cork stopper, tipped a few grains into the palm of her hand, then sprinkled them over Harrison and Lana's heads. Lana glanced across at Harrison and saw to her horror that he had been turned into a wooden statue. She tried to speak, but couldn't move her lips. She couldn't move her head either, or her eyes, or any other part of her body. Suddenly it dawned on her. She was a statue too. You're probably wondering why you can't move. You've been turned into wood to keep you fresh. Rumpolt? The little old man edged into view. The girl can go outside with the others. The boy? The witch brushed Harrison's painted wooden check with her yellow fingers. The boy can go in the pot. Yes, mistress. No! Lana yelled in her mind. Let him go! But again no words came out. All she could do was watch in horror as the little old man dragged Harrison out of her eyeline. Lana heard the lid of the cauldron being lifted, and the hiss and spit of the boiling water. Every part of her wanted to kick and punch and fight, to do anything she could do to help her brother, but she couldn't move a muscle. The witch walked towards the cauldron and out of Lana's line of sight. Now all Lana could see was an empty corner of the room. In he goes! Shouted the little old man, and then Lana heard huffing and puffing as if someone was struggling with a heavy weight. Then, zwing! The sound of an arrow, immediately followed by a blood-curdling scream. Ooh, where do we think the arrows come from? Who is screaming? Is it Harrison? Is it someone else? Come back tomorrow and we will find out how this story is going to end up finishing. Bye, Year 5.